Good evening to you guys in the West, and good morning to the people here in the East. I am Boki Ken. We'll be doing some Bible reading on Obadiah and some commentary. We're going to be looking at some commentary on two specific verses: Proverbs chapter 30, verse 12, and Isaiah 65, verse 5. And the title is yours truly is Sellouts and Hypocrites. I was going to add in self righteous hypocrites, but I guess that falls under that spectrum. Before I continue, just disclaimer: I am not a theologian nor am I a biblical scholar. I do not deny or confirm the accuracy of the things I'm going to be reading. But I do hope and pray to the Lord by His grace that even by simply sharing the insights of these given to the insights that will be given to by these verses and the commentary that has uh, made possible for us to access. We will get something out of it. You will get something out of it, and so will I. So to start, let us start reading Obadiah first, and we'll be going to some of the commentaries. So if only I can share my screen, but apparently it won't allow me to. So I can, but there used to be an option where I could just share the window. Hang on. So I just need to make sure if it's being reflected. Yeah, okay. All right. So first we're going to be looking at Obadiah. Now this is a short book, but it speaks a lot about loyalty and betrayal and selling out. So let's just read the whole thing. Okay, because we also have further into the verses. This is how God deals with traitors and how God uh, compen- uh, uh, compensates for the victim of betrayal. So here we are. Let's start. The vision of Obadiah. Thus saith the Lord God concerning Edom. We have heard a rumor from the Lord, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen. Thou art greatly despised. The pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord. If thieves came to thee, if robbers by night, how art thou cut off? Would they not have stolen till they had enough? If the grape gatherers came to thee, would they have not leaved some grapes? How were the things of Esau searched out? How are his hidden things sought up? All the men of thy confederacy, take note of this word confederacy, have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him. Shall I not in that day, saith the Lord, even destroy the wise men out of Edom and understanding out of the mount of Esau? I just need to make sure my mic's on. All right. Okay, sorry. And thy mighty men, O Teman, shall be dismayed, to the end that every one of the mount of Esau may be cut off by slaughter. For thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. The day that thou stoodest in the day of the other side, in the day that the strangers carried away captive his forces, and foreigners entered into his gates, and cast lots upon Jerusalem, even thou was as one of them. But thou shouldest not have looked on the day of thy brother in the day that he became a stranger. Neither shouldest thou have rejoiced over the children of Judah in the day of their destruction. Neither shouldest thou have spoken proudly in the day of distress. Thou shouldest not have entered into the gate of my people in the day of their calamity. Thou shouldest not have looked on their affliction in the day of their calamity, nor have laid hands on their substance in the day of their calamity. Neither shouldest thou have stood in the crossway to cut off those of his that did escape. Neither shouldest thou have delivered up those of his that did remain in the day of distress. For the day of the Lord is near upon all the heathen, as thou hast done. It shall be done unto thee. Thy reward shall return upon thine own head. For as ye have drunk upon my holy mountain, so shall all the heathen drink continually. They shall drink, and they shall swallow down, and they shall be as though they had not been. But upon Mount Zion shall be deliverance, and there shall be holiness. And the house of Jacob shall possess their possessions, and the house of Jacob shall be fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, and the house of Esau for stubble, and they shall kindle in them and devour them. And there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau, for the Lord hath spoken it. And they of the south shall possess the mount of Esau, and they of the plain the Philistines. And they shall possess the fields of Ephraim and the fields of Samaria, and Benjamin shall possess Gilead. And the captivity of those, no, sorry, and the captivity of this host of the children of Israel shall possess that of the Canaanites. And lastly, even unto Zarephath, and the captivity of Jerusalem, which is in Sepharad, shall possess the cities of the south, and Savior shall come up on Mount Zion to judge the mount of Esau, and the kingdom shall be the Lord's. Okay, so small interjectory here to give you context of the whole thing, as much as I can give you. So the whole thing referred to the city of Edom. And Edom, the people of Edom, the Edomites or the Edomians, or let's say the people that resided in Mount Tenman, were basically the descendants of Esau or Esau. I don't know how you say that. And knowing the history between Jacob and Esau, it came off. Jacob stole Esau's inheritance, but we all know that Esau didn't deserve the inheritance, although it was to be bestowed upon him. God intended him not to have it, because Esau definitely had other people's best interests in mind, and that is something I have to look into further. So God didn't want Esau to have the inheritance; He wanted it to be Jacob. So because of that, these people were probably not mad at God, but let's say they were more mad at Jacob. And because of such history between the brothers, these people hated Jacob, or basically they hated Judah, because they're under Jacob, because these people were under Jacob's rule, under his inheritance to lead these people. So because of that, later, as demonstrated in the verses, Esau, the descendants of Esau, or let's say the Edomites, when Jerusalem, or let's say Israel, was under attack by their detractors, and supposedly, actually, Jerusalem's detractors are also Edom's detractors. Now, because of such disdain, especially when Israelites detractors were besieging them, Edom stood by. Edom laughed at them, just stood there and watched, let them grovel. They didn't offer help, they didn't offer refuge, and they even cut off escapees so that the enemy would catch them. And I think that at this time, I guess their detractors were mainly Persia or Babylon, or yeah, I guess even the Canaanites. There was a confederacy of heathens and pagans who sought the best interests of who sought out Israel's best interests. But we all know that's not true. They wanted to conquer these lands. So, and knowing this, basically Edom sold out. They were being a sellout to to the descendants of Jacob, which is Judah and Jerusalem. And what happened next was, well, to make things worse, Edom decided to side with the enemy. They really did, as shown uh, as shown in the in the earlier verses, where it said something about Edom's confederacy. But this sort of coalition between Edom and Babylon didn't work out, because Babylon still wanted to conquer the land of the Israelites. They were on a conquest to take over territories, and they would do it by any means necessary to expand their kingdom. I mean, this was all that this was all about. It was just people were getting in armor and started conquering lands. But so it's because of Edom's disdain and bitterness for the descendants of Jacob, because of the history between Jacob and Esau, they didn't bother to even bat an eye on Jerusalem. I mean, both Edom and uh, Judah were facing a common enemy. They were facing surrounding nations that were out to get them. And Edom was in it too, much like the Israelites. But Edom didn't bat an eye. Edom somehow knew that judgment would come upon Israel. And because of that, they just stood by and watched Israel get their butts kicked and be enslaved by their captors. And when there were refugees or escapees, they would cut them off so that the enemy would get them. So Edom was a sellout. But it took a big turn for the worst for Edom, because while they like to think that they were friends with these attacking nations, well, first they were robbed off of their possessions, they were robbed off their wine, heck, they were even robbed off of their hidden treasures. And then this raid was so great and meticulous as well, that nothing escaped the attention of this pillage, of this raid and pillage by these attacking nations. And second of all, I mean, they were making a treaty to be part of the confederacy of this attacking nation, but this nation wouldn't also have it. I mean, they also had a compass that they wouldn't dare side with the enemy. So it seems like they were only using Edom to take as a vantage point, because Edom, in the first five verses, uh, it is expressed by God through Obadiah, that although you're like an eagle and you set your nest in the stars, so Edom, or the Mount Tenman, was basically a mountainous area, and it was so strategic. I mean, it was a strategic. It was a. Sorry, I can't really talk right now. And the idea that Tenman was a mountain, I guess it was on a as on a cliff, or a city situated by a cliff. I mean, if they were invading nations, in order for them to get to the city of Tenman, they'd have to climb the mountain. They have to they had to they had to go get up in elevation. They have to climb up the elevation to get to the city in order for them to besiege them. But because of this, but because of the fact that they could that the city of Edom could leverage from this altitude that they were in, it would be difficult for opposing nations to reach them, much less even set up the battering ram on the gate. So Edom, in this way, was powerful. Like, let's say, it was a very in this way they had good defense. And yeah, they were also, and then Edom was also a place known for their counselors, their wise men, even their mighty warriors too. But they were mostly known for their wisdom. They were mostly known for their counselors. They were mostly known for very much the intellectuals there, mind you. But God did say that He would destroy both the mighty men and the counselors of Edom, that they wouldn't know what to do because of the amount of mass panic brought about by these raiders and these grape gatherers. And I mean, well, they thought that their detractors were their friends too. I mean, they were trying to have a confederacy with them, but because they knew that their detractors had their best interests in mind, they got raided and pillaged. Everything that they owned, everything they possessed, gone, whoosh, down the drain. Nothing escaped nothing escaped their attention. And God would see to it that Edom, although Edom will not be restored as a nation, so Edom would be scattered throughout. The descendants of Esau would be scattered throughout to never again uh, reunite as a nation. So, because Edom was such a sellout and Edom was such a traitor, was what they. I mean, this is what I mean. I mean, so, but Edom was such a traitor. An immense amount of betrayal was also bestowed upon them by their so-called supposed friends, quote unquote, capital letters, friends. But their friends also betrayed them too. I mean, they were under a confederacy, am I correct? But no, they it was either they did trust them, but they decided to betray them after, or they just thought they were their friends. You see, folks, when you betray, when you get in, when you be a sellout or a traitor, especially when you also agree to side with your detractors or the detractor, especially when those same detractors are the detractors of your own friends too, or your own group, then expect that God would meet you in kind. He would meet you severely. He will give what is due, which is due, because in Obadiah, you have, in this reading of Obadiah, we have discussed, it is revealed to us that God deals with traitors severely. And I guess Edom being a sellout, Edom being disloyal, Edom being a traitor, was also met with the same was also met with the same sin by these heathens, by the opposing nations, by these other opposing nations. whom they thought they were friends, they also experienced disloyalty. They also experienced betrayal. So this is what happens to traders too. This is what happens to sellouts. They will also, because if they're capable, and if they're capable of betrayal, and so as the opposing nations, then they wouldn't have a problem betraying betraying each other too. So the same thing happened to Edom. when they betrayed when they betrayed the Israelites, the same predicament happened to them too. They were also they also experienced an immense amount of betrayal. So I guess this is how traitors are punished by God. They betrayed, they betray, and they get betrayed immensely later. Massive amounts of betrayal, massive amounts of being sold out, massive amounts of uh, just looked down on, and neglect. It's betrayal and neglect, ignorance to the concept right now, that that they were uh, that knowing that these people were also traitors. I mean, I mean, it also gives me an idea that these opposing nations, although pagan, they had a better moral compass when it came to loyalty, when it came to companionship and loyalty. They knew that they knew that no one likes a sellout. And to make things worse, Edom was a sellout, and at the same time, Edom was also their enemy. So you could see that that hypocrisy that even the pagans can see, and that is that is also that also applies to us Christians today. A lot of us, even me, we're pretty inconsistent, and this is what allows the pagans. Although we could say, "Ah, you're just pointing fingers. What makes you think you're holier than me?" Well, that's smooth. But at the end of the day, they're still going to make leverage of that, and we know deep down that's true. So we Christians, we lack a lot of consistency too. Edom was a good example of that too, which also brings us now to the commentary that we're going to be reading, which is of Isaiah chapter 65, verse 5, and a bit of Proverbs chapter 30, verse 12. So just let me share the screen just a little bit. Just give me time here, guys. Oh, so finally they decide to finally it decides to show the windows that of which I can share. Come on, baby, don't. Ah, okay. So I am not allowed to share Isaiah 65 by itself, but I could still share the entire. Oh no, I can now. Awesome, cool. All right. So I'm just gonna check if this is being reflected in the screen. There we go. All right. So we're gonna be looking at these now. The funny thing about sellouts and hypocrites too, these verses also apply not just to the Edomites and Israelites, but also us. But Ellicott takes it a step further. He also included some cultural context to this one, where it also expressed the attitudes of these idolaters, these heathens. So, uh, and yeah, the multitudes too, because there were more than just one race and one tribe. Okay, so here we are. We have Isaiah 65, verse 5, which say, "Stand by thyself, come not near to me, for I am holier than thou. these are a smoke in my nose, a fire that burneth all the day. Wow, holier than thou, trash beneath my feet kind of people. These guys are a piece of work. So here we have Ellicott. He has here. By the way, these commentaries you can find them in BibleHub.com. I love that website. So here we are, Ellicott's commentary, which say, "Stand by myself, stand by thyself." The picture in its main outlines reminds us of the proud exclusiveness of the later Pharisees, and the root evil is, of course, identical. Here, however, the ground of the exclusiveness is not the consciousness of the peculiar privileges of Israel, but rests on what was an actual apostasy. Those of whom Isaiah speaks boasted of their initiation into heathen mysteries. Baal, Tammuz, or the like, has given them a kind of consecrated character and separating them from the profanum vulgus of the Israelites, who were faithful to the God of their fathers. Yes, so this tells us that 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 worshippers of Baal, Tammuz, heathens, or Tammuz, or the heathens, or the pagans, or the multitudes, they would leverage or point out the inconsistency of Israel. And we know that Israel was perfectly good, perfectly, they were perfectly good people. They were perfectly consistent, and they obviously didn't God, worship God and worship idols on the side. Of course, they didn't do that. I'm just kidding. I was being sarcastic. So, because of Israel's inconsistency with their supposed devotion to God, but at the same time, there have been, but there Israel has fallen short of consistency, where they would do the things that the pagans would do, especially when they worshiped God, when they gave devotion to God, and in the sides they were also worshiping idols. And we all know that you can't serve two masters. Either you hate the other and love the other one, right? Now, we think this is a scummy thing to do. Like people just want to point fingers so they can get you at that. But at the same time, it's not wrong. They're not wrong about the fact that Israel was inconsistent. See, inconsistent, profanum vulgus. This is what profanum vulgus. But still, they exhibited this self righteous hypocrisy that the self-righteous hypocrisy, because these heathens were no different, because they would one up with because they would one up against each other and sell each other out. They would also sacrifice their children. They would also kill and steal from one another. I mean, these guys had a debaucherous culture. But here they are, the people, the followers, and are saying to Israel, they're like, you guys are supposed to be the more morally consistent, the guys who know better than us, and yet here you are acting like us. So yeah, because if the Israelites think that what the pagans were doing are wrong, why isn't it wrong? It should also be wrong for the Israelites to do it too. So they made use of this hypocrisy of the Israelites. They were pulling off a no you. But you could see how God hates because it doesn't matter which side you would be in. The thing is that you can't have this this kind of attitude. You can't have that. This is pride at its finest, at its biggest form. At least I'm not like you, or I am not like you, or at least I'm this and I am not that. You know, I'm pretty sure this guy's pretty common. The guy, his name is Ray Comfort. He's a sweetheart too. And what I can remember when I used to watch his videos, he made a sort of analogy of sinners, and these sinners would say stuff like, "Well, I know I'm not supposed to be smoking, but hey, I'm a good person. Look at that guy. He's smoking marijuana, and he's smoking more amounts than I would smoke with a regular cigarette. I mean, he's going to turn into a burnout soon." And so, going to that burnout, he would say, "Well, I may smoke a lot of weed, but hey, I'm a good person. Look at that guy. I mean, all I do is smoke weed here. I mean, look at that guy. He's robbing banks." So you go to the guy robbing banks, and he says, "Well, I may rob banks, but hey, I'm a good person. I may steal, but look at the politicians. They're stealing more money out from us, and they're doing it under the spectrum and or in the light of good." And the politicians would be like, "Well, I may have stole money, but hey, I'm a good person. I'm pocketing this money because I have my best interests, because I have this country's best interest in mind. Look at all those terrorists." And from that cycle of just pointing fingers without by all that, that's I mean the core of all that finger pointing, just pointing fingers, that that these people would undermine their sin, their inconsistencies. Yeah, let's use inconsistencies for a while. They would undermine their own inconsistency in order to validate it. They would undermine that to be able to pass judgment, to come off as righteous, which is a scumbag thing too. Because how could you be pointing fingers when you, on the other hand, have fingers pointing at you too? Or you're giving people reason to point fingers at you as well. That is your inconsistencies. I'm not going to use sin for a bit, but let's just say inconsistencies. Because of your inconsistencies, or knowing that you have an inconsistency, how could you turn a blind eye to that and say that these people are inconsistent too? Right? If anyone is without sin, cast the first stone. If we say that we have no sin, we are liars. Now, I'm not saying people shouldn't do the right thing. People shouldn't apprehend criminals. People shouldn't take down terrorists, or people shouldn't be controlling the purchase and availability of substances to in order they shouldn't mitigate that in order to control the population so it doesn't go on total chaos. But the question is, why would they do that? Are they doing that because they have other people's best interests in mind? Or are they doing that so that they can come off with this moral grounding? Or let's say, if I were to subdue an attacker, am I doing that to protect the ones who are behind me? Or am I doing that because I just think the guy is just a jerk? And in which many occasions I've also been a jerk. So which is which? Do I act under the telos, or do I act under my own pharisaical self righteousness? It is in that part also where we add things into the works of Christ, traditions or doctrines that Christ never said or have you do. He never said, add to my tradition, add to my doctrine. He never said that. Right? So we're getting sidetracked, but No, we're not getting sidetracked at all. But I want to get through all the commentaries so that we have room for the open mic. But it appears that no one is watching, so fine. We'll just go through this one. I am holier than thou. Literally, I am holy to you, one whom thou mayest not approach. Because I'm so clean, I don't want to be dirtied by you. You're trash beneath my feet. Wow. You are something that I would avoid stepping on. Wow. By some commentators, the verb is taken as transitive. I make thee holy. Have power to impart holiness, but this is less satisfactory, both grammatically and as to meaning. These are smoke in my nose. The point of the clause is that the punishment is represented as not future. The self-exalting idolaters are already as those who are being consumed in the fire of the divine wrath, and their smoke is a savor of death in the nostrils of Jehovah. What does Benson have to say? Yeah, they're just whenever people are just doing this, just being self-righteous and hypocritical, they're just stacking up judgment for God to bestow upon them. So, and it is very much demonstrated throughout Scripture, where Israel is judged and the heathen are judged. So, what does Benson have to say? Isaiah 65, 5, 6. Who say, stand by thyself, come not near to me. Noli me tangere. Though they were so exceedingly guilty, yet they pretended to singular sanctity. Hang on, I gotta check if my audio is doing well, because I don't think people are watching. Because I mean, okay, so it's working. I had to check it on my phone. All right, so where were we? Okay, so stand by thyself, come not near to me. Though they were so exceedingly guilty, yet they pretended to singular sanctity, so that they would not suffer others to come near or touch them. The reader will observe that the crime of hypocrisy is here decreed, and everyone that is acquainted with the Gospels will easily see that the character of the Pharisees and their followers is drawn in this passage. And yeah, I have my Bible with me. I'm not a KJV oleist, but I do love the KJV. That is my first. That is the first book I go to, and then and from there I start going down to the other translations to try and make sense with the other versions and translations to actually see what kind of point God is conveying. So yeah, I think this is another form of hermeneutics, but real hermeneutics is when you look at the language and look at the context of what is actually being conveyed. So it's not just by translations, but probably those translations are the result of that. But I can't say but I really can't say that most of them are honest. So here we are with Isaiah. I'm reading from the national. I'm reading for the. Sorry, guys. I'm reading from the New American Standard Bible. So 60. So this is Luke 18:10. So what does Luke have to say about self-righteous, holier than thou, hypocritical people? Well, I guess we're about to find out as soon as I can find out. Look, here we are. So Luke 18:10. All right. So it says here, written in red letters. Two men went up into the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax gatherer. Let's just read the rest of this one. The Pharisee stood and was praying thus to himself: God, I thank thee that I am not like other people, swindlers, unjust, adulterers, even like this tax gatherer. I fast twice a week. I pay tithes of all that I get. But the tax gatherer, standing some distance away, was even unwilling to lift up his eyes to heaven, but was beating his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, the sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself shall be humbled, but he who humbles himself shall be exalted. Wow, this Pharisee, holier than thou. I mean, right off the bat already, he says that I am not like this person. But even in his prayer, he is already expressing iniquity. If we say we have no sin, we are liars. So right off the bat, in this Pharisee's prayer, he's lying. I'm sorry about my throat. It's the coffee. Oh, I'm sorry. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself shall be humbled, but he who humbles himself shall be exalted. Right. The Pharisee doesn't know. He doesn't know that he doesn't know. You see, holier than thou. At least I'm not like this person. Or I am not like you. You see, that is the kind, that is a sense of pride, ladies and gentlemen, where you could, where you could just go and say stuff like that, as if, as if you've never seen or looked in the mirror before. For I am holier than thou. Thus they esteem themselves holier than others, though all their holiness lay in rituals, and those too such as God never commanded. Of these God said, these are smoke in my nostrils, a fire that burneth all day. Yeah, you could be at church, you could be singing in the choir, you could always be present in church activities and still not have God's inspiration, or still not have the spirit in you. Because these people who are doing these rituals, who are doing these traditions, as if it gives them, as it gives God this divine that is satisfactory, God is telling you, dude, you're doing it wrong. I mean, what good are your traditions if you can't even, I mean, what good are you with following traditions or rituals that, though they may please me, but what good is that if you don't even have, but what good is that if if you intrinsically have have a different motive as to why you're doing this? Are you really doing this for me, or you just want to come off as morally grand? Didn't I tell you that I look not in the outward appearance, I look in the heart? See, that's possible, guys. And God could also call you out for that, for irreverence or sacrilege. So you got to be careful. Even when you go to pray, even when you, or even before you read the Bible, you have to ask yourself why. And if you know if it's not good or it's unworthy, then you better take time to reflect and pray about it before you even start communing with God, or before you even start reading his word. You have to make sure that your interests aligns your motives as to you wanting to do God's work, or do his will. Because if your motives suggest differently, which I'm sure God sees, not only will he not hear you in prayer, but you'll also be wasting your time, and you will make God angry. You will make him feel like he's breathing through he's breathing in smoke, because he doesn't like that. And afterwards, you're going to say, I'm not like you. Come on. So here we are next. That is a continual provocation to me. A smoke is an offense to our nose. Behold, it is written before me. They may think I take no notice of these things, but I will as certainly remember them as princes, remember the things which, in order that they may not forget them. They record in writing, and they shall know that I take notice of and will remember them. For I will not keep silence. That is, I will not long neglect the punishment of them. Though for a while I have delayed it, like a man who restrains his wrath. So God here is also practicing self-control, discipline, for some wise reasons which are best known to himself, but will recompense into their bosom. Let's see what Psalms chapter 50, verse 21 has to say concerning that restraining wrath. Let's see. I'm reading from the New American Standard Bible, by the way. So 21, it says, 21, it says, these things you have done, and I kept silence. You thought that I was just like you. I will reprove you and state the case in order before your eyes. Wow. David's serious here. So what does this commentary have to say? No, it doesn't have anything to say about it. He will reveal that if need be, if you in order to stop it. But when you do that, it better be that of which is sound and noble and not egoistic, but will recompense into their bosom. My punishment of them shall be severe and certain, but yet it shall be just and not greater than their sins have sinned. Now, based on experience, guys, I used to feel good when reading about this, like when the sinners would be, well, I still feel good about it now that we know that sinners will be punished, they will get there, so we could rejoice. But at the same time, now I'm considering fear because guess what? I am also a sinner. We are also a sinner. We may be saved, but we're also sinners, still sinners. Because we're still in our fallen nature. So this also applies to us. Because even if we're God's children, we would still be stacking up the smoke in his nostrils. And out of fear, we better not wait that he has to chastise us, that he has to discipline us, that he has to put us down in our lowest again, because we know that's painful. We wouldn't want that now. So, I mean, this is like lightning to me. It looks pretty, it looks powerful, but it's still dangerous. It still can kill you. So while I know that sinners and hypocrites and self-righteous people and selves will be judged, well, guess what? This also applies to me if I do this, if I do these things. And I wouldn't want to be the receiving end in God's judgment anytime. After all, he can kill both the spirit and the body. So I'm also considering fear now on this one. Because before, I mean, I was just it was just all feel good. But now, so for me, looking back at that, it seemed dangerous. But now it's both feel good, but scared, because this could happen to me too. Now, let's see what Mr. Barnes has to say, which say, stand by to itself, who at the time that they engage in these abominations are distinguished for spiritual pride. The most worth, this is big, the most worthless people are commonly the most proud, and they who have wandered farthest from God have in general the most exalted idea of their own goodness. Yeah, this Proverbs 30 verse 12 will also relate to this, but we'll get to that. It was a characteristic of a large part of the Jewish nation. Yeah, just like we read in Luke 18 verses 10 to 14 right now. Anyway, it was a characteristic of a large part of the Jewish nation, and especially of the Pharisees, to be self-righteous and proud. A striking illustration of this we have in the following description of the Hindu yogis by Roberts. So who are these Hindu yogis? Well, according to Roberts, he says, those men are so isolated by their superstition and penances that they hold but little contact with the rest of mankind. They wander about in the dark in the place of burning the dead or among the graves. There they affect to hold converse with evil and other spirits. And there they pretend to receive intimations respecting the destinies of others. They will eat things which are religiously clean or unclean. They neither wash their bodies, nor comb their hair, nor cut their nails, nor wear clothes. They are counted to be most holy among the people and are looked upon as beings of another world. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a lofty look if I've ever seen one. This is a lofty look of oneself if you have ever seen one. I mean, even the ending kills it. See, slays what Roberts is saying, or should I say, Mr. Roberts slayed this. And this is the same thing this is the same thing with the Jews, especially after reading Luke 18 verses 10 to 14. They were so focused on their traditions. They were so focused on their image. They were so focused on their reputation. They were so focused on their status that they would look down on people, especially between that parable between the Jew and the tax gatherer, saying, "I am not like this person. I've done your will. I pay my taxes. I give tithes, and I'm not a swindler. I'm not a thief like this guy." I mean, he's so focused on pointing fingers and so focused talking about or even insinuating that he wouldn't want to be associated with these people, that he even undermines his own mistakes. Same with these yogis. I guess Sadhguru is also a example of this one. People coming there watching him, video recording his whatever it is he's doing. Sadhguru, or other gurus, I guess. I don't know. But whatever Roberts is saying here is like that of the Jews. They're proud and self-righteous. They would they would undermine their own personality in order to point fingers. Wow. These are a smoke in my nose. How this is conveyed is anger, because anger is often associated with heavy breathing. I mean, do you guys not perspire when you're angry? Or do you guys not breathe heavy when you're angry? Or do you guys not hyperventilate when you're angry? Like you just get so mad that the mechanism of of the the mechanism of of real hyperventilation is being manifested through the movement of your chest and your abdominals by expansion, rapid expansion, by by rapid expansion. Now that is that is an angry man. Now the word rendered knows means sometimes knows in Numbers 11:20 and Job 40:24. Let's go take a look. Yeah, this is, I guess this is talking about a literal nose. Let's go take a look. So Numbers 11:20. But the way this is being conveyed here, I mean, what God is saying is that they're just making him angry because heavy breathing is associated with anger. So he's expressing that anger. But a whole month until it comes out of your nostrils and becomes loathsome to you, because you have rejected the Lord who is among you, and have wept before him, saying, "Why did we ever leave Egypt?" So God answered the complaint of the people by promising they would soon be surfeited with meat. Huh. What about Job? Job 40:24. 40:24. There you go. Can anyone capture him when he's on watch with barbs? Can anyone pierce his nose? So, what is he trying to tell us here? That's another thing I have to look into. Sometimes nose and sometimes anger. Oh, yeah, so it is a literal nose. Okay. So, in this case, this is anger because anger is evinced by hard breathing. Yes. The Septuagint renders this is the smoke of my anger. But the correct idea is probably that their conduct was offensive to God, as smoke is unpleasant or painful into the nostrils. That too. Like because because God disdain, I mean God even expressed in Proverbs that the very thing that he hates, like really, or the most, is pride. Because pride makes an ass out of people. I mean, I mean, I mean, well, by the pride of Lucifer, he's now Satan. God hates pride. It makes an ass out of people, really. Self-righteous ass to be exact. So because of this manifestation of pride, hypocrisy, self-righteousness, moral grounding, this is like smoke in his nose. Like it's unpleasant, it's disdainful, just as how smoke enters the nose and just roughens up the air filters in it. Or as smoke excites irritation when breathed, so their conduct excited displeasure. Yeah, same thing. Displeasure, discomfort, or let's say in association with heavy breathing when someone is angry. Or it may mean, as Lot suggests, that their conduct kindled the smoke, and a fire in his nose is the emblems of his wrath. Yes, I mean, where there is smoke, there is fire. So don't feed it. Don't you dare feed it. It will be worse. There is probably an allusion to their sacrifices here. The smoke of their sacrifices constantly ascending was unpleasant and provoking to God. Yeah, just like the Jew between the Jew and the tax gatherer. I have paid my taxes. I have given tithes. And I am not like this swindler and this thief who doesn't put his money where it should be. And God is there like being, really, dude? Really? Are you going to be a self righteous hypocrite? I mean, look at you right now. You're praying to me as if you never done anything wrong in your life. Even by your own prayer, you are lying to yourself and you lie to me. Yes. What good is your traditions? What good is even following doctrine if even deep down you have no, if even deep down it is not even at the, it is not even merely at the level of best interests in mind. God hates that. And because of that, God could also call you out for irreverence or sacrilege. Because although you may be doing the will of God, maybe your motivation is contradictory, right? Are you doing my will? Are you following traditions which I've left for you specifically without you, I mean, and not the added myths or doctrines of man? Like, are you doing really because you want to, like passionately, or are you doing this for something else? Be honest with me. I know what's in your heart. You see? A fire that burneth all the day. The idea here probably is that their conduct kindled a fire of indignation. So you're giving God an excuse to pass judgment, pass punishment, or chastise you. You better not kindle the fire. Now, again, when I look at self righteous people and how they're just stacking judgment on themselves, then yeah, I feel good. Heck, I even feel good about myself. But right now, I feel two things. I feel good about myself and I feel fear. Because again, I am also a sinner and I am still prone to sin. And I still sin. And I'm doing my best not to. So, if I'm going to feel good about what happens to sinners, I hope and pray that I don't forget that I will fall under this category too if I end up doing it myself. Because while I may like to think that I don't do this sin specifically, that doesn't mean I am exempted from other sorts of judgment and punishment from other sins too. Because at the end of the day, sin is sin, and I am not without sin. We are not without sin, saved or not. And this consideration of fearing God as to this, well, this is humbling me right now, because while I know that these people will get theirs, I could possibly fall into this category too. So there's not much point in actually, celebrating it. Much to the fact that it somehow just caresses your ego. So I advise you folks that while you can rejoice that sinners will get theirs, the wicked will get theirs, it is possible that you'll also fall under this category. So you might as well do your best not to sin, especially this way, the one thing that God really hates the most. And there's going to be more, folks. And I just gotta ask you right this. I just gotta ask you guys this: like, how does this verse, along with its commentaries, and how does this not kill free grace? Believe for a nanosecond, and you're locked in. It's not your spirit, it's your flesh. Bull crap. Out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaketh. God looketh at the out no, man looketh at the outward appearance, but God looketh at the heart. And whatever is in your heart is made manifest through your body, your physical body. Like, how does this not kill free grace? I mean, it doesn't look like that God will still validate you when you sin. You can, you can scream discipleship, you can chant it all you want, but hey, fine. I agree, because we Christians have a standard to follow too. We have to try to do this. And again, this is not for, and then yeah, the granting that this is for treasure. This is also this is treasure. This is for treasure. This is for uh to like reach heaven and stuff like that, but to be spiritual. But guess what? Let's make this practical. Let's make this practical. You are making God angry, so you better not wait for him to smack you and to spank you. Yeah, let's put it in a more practical sense. You better not give reason God to spank you, saved or not. Don't give God reason to spank you, especially when you do something that is under the spectrum of the one thing that he hates the most, which is pride. Being that, and then that subsidiary is self-righteousness, a lofty look of oneself, being a sellout too. I mean, the Edomites also expressed pride there by selling out. the descendants of Jacob, especially siding with the enemy. And they also were paid back with immense amounts of betrayal. God is a judge. While you may rejoice, also consider he is not partial. He doesn't give a pass to sin, no matter whom it comes from. A fire. So yeah. JFB. Smoke, alluding to the smoke of their self, applicable to the hypocritical self-justifiers of our Lord's time. Matthew 9, Luke 5:30, 18:11, Jude 19. Let's take a look at that. Let's take a look. Jude verse 19. Let's take a look at these verses, right? Matthew 9. Yeah, you can tell that this one is old. I mean, I would show you my camera, but for intimity's sake, but I'll show them some other streams. Matthew 9:11. And when the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, "Why is your teacher eating with the tax gatherers and sinners?" But when he heard this, he said, "It is not those who are healthy who need a physician, but those who are sick. But go and learn what this means. I desired compassion and not sacrifice, for I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners." And these people were sick. God came that you may have life and you'll have it more abundantly. Yeah, you don't send a healthy man to a physician. Let's take it a step further. You don't send a man who knows how to handle his health to a physician. Wow. Jesus is a very awesome dude. What about Luke 5:30? I don't know why I closed my Bible already. I mean, there's still more. Luke. I hope you guys are also getting a lot from this. I'm getting a lot from this too. Luke 5:30. Going through the cross references. So we have 30. And the Pharisees and their scribes began grumbling at his disciples, saying, "Why do you eat and drink with the tax gatherers and sinners?" And Jesus answered and said to them, "It is not those who are well who need a physician, but those who are sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance." There you go. There you go. And we already read verse 11 of chapter 18 of Luke. Let's see what Jude has to say about self-righteous people. There's what Paul, Timothy. Oh, where is Jude? Man, if I can't even find Jude, I am done. Oh, geez, I can't find. No, it's after James. Wow, I can't find Jude. Please don't hate me. Hang on, guys. I'm just going to go to the table of contents. Wow. Oh, Jude's after John and right before Revelations. Okay, so we head to the very corner of the book. I don't remember where Jude is, therefore I am unsaved. Lols. Okay, so Jude verse 19. These are the ones who cause divisions, worldly minded, devoid of the Spirit. Yeah, these self-righteous people are devoid of the Spirit. Because the Spirit also expresses humility. Okay. So, smoke, alluding to the smoke of their self-righteous sacrifices, the fire of God's wrath was kindled at the sight and exhibited itself in the smoke that breathed forth from his nostrils. In Hebrew the nose is the seat of anger, and the nostrils distended in wrath, as it were, breath forth smoke, like a dragon where it breathes smoke through its nostrils. Yeah. So there is this expression of uh, fiery, intense anger, which has led to wrath. God will not spare you from judgment. It's kind of like one way of saying you deserve it. And I wouldn't blame God. I mean, God has never done absolutely anything wrong. So if anyone who has that right, it would be God. If anyone has that right to cast the first stone, that would be God. But God is also self controlling. He's also merciful. He's gracious. He has discipline. And that's also mentioned there. He delays people's judgment to give them a chance. Not in a temporal sense, but not in a temporal sense, but God is merciful. What about Matthew Poole? This is Smokey's favorite person. Though they were so exceedingly uh, favorite, yeah, I guess, because he says he keeps it concise. Though they were so exceedingly guilty, yet they pretended to a singular sanctity, so as they would not suffer others to come near or touch them. The Samaritans are usually charged with this uncharitableness and the use of this form of words. But as some do more excuse the Samaritans than the other Jews as to this rigor. So it may be question rigor? Yeah, rigor. So it may be questioned whether they were not at this time carried into captivity. And certain it is that among the Jews there was such a generation from whom the Pharisees in our Savior's time were derived. And this was the reason of not eating, except they washed when they came from the market. Let's take a look at Mark 7, verse 4. Mark 7. When they come from the marketplace, they did not eat unless they cleansed themselves. And there are many other things which they have received in order to observe, such as the washing of cups and pitchers and copper pots. And the Pharisees and the scribes ask him, why do your disciples not walk according to the tradition of the elders, but eat their bread with impure hands? Hang on, guys, I need a break. I'll be right back. Hey guys, I'm back. Sorry, I was you guys don't hear me? I can very much hear myself. Hi Guru, good to see you. Can't watch the stream due to firewall protection, but you're there in the spirit. Yeah, thanks for chiming in, Guru. What's the takeaway? Yeah, self-righteousness is indeed a soul killer. Yeah. Hi Nikki, it's good to see you. Well, I got off. I went off AFK for a while. I just bid mom goodbye and you know need a glass of water. All right, so I don't know when exactly you guys chimed in here, but thanks. I was busy reading the commentary, so let's continue on. So where did I last left off? Where did I left off? Where did I left off? Yeah, so Mark 7:4. So yeah, these Jewish people were hygienic in the sense, and they were like, "Why? Look at your disciples. Why are they eating with impure hands?" Now I can't tell if this is a hygienic matter or a spiritual matter or a purity matter. But let's see what God has to say in verse 6. And he said to them, "Rightly did Isaiah prophesy of you hypocrites." Wow. As it is written, these people honor me with their lips, but their heart is far away from me. But in vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrines the precepts of men. Neglecting the commandment of God, you hold to the tradition of men. He was also saying to them, "You nicely set aside the commandment of God in order to keep your tradition. For Moses said, 'Honor your father and your mother, and he who speaks evil of father or mother, let him be put to death.' But you say, 'If a man says to his father or his mother, anything of mine you might have been helped by his korban,' you no longer permit him to do anything for his father or his mother, thus invalidating the word of God by your tradition which you have handed down, and you do many things such as that." And after he called the multitude to him again, he began saying to them, "Listen to me, all of you, and understand. There is nothing outside the man which going into him can defile him, but the things which proceed out of the man are what defile the man. If any man has ears to hear, let him hear." You see how does these verses not kill free grace? How does this not kill free grace? You're good in God's books, but no, you're not, even if you're saved. In fact, they're adhering to a small form of Gnosticism where no sin or no error could possibly reside in you. Wow. Talk about, you see, worshiping God in vain. Sounds like irreverence or sacrilege to me. You don't have God's best interests in mind as to why you do this, or by the traditions of man. And heck, why are you even adding to the scripture? This is why Christians become atheists, because we add things that God didn't even ask us to add. This is how self-righteous we are. This is how we this is the kind of lofty look that we have, and God abhors it. And we better rid this off and not wait for him to spank us. So, lest peradventure they should there have touched some heathen or some person who was legally unclean. Thus they esteem themselves holier than others, though all their holiness lay in these rituals. Yes, they base this form of divine satisfactory in the rituals. but not in their attitude, not in their integrity, not in their soul, not in their self-examination of their character or their intrinsic motives. No, it's this rituals. That is why it is possible for you to be in church and still not have the Spirit of God in you. Or you go to church, and granted, you have the Spirit of God in you, but you're going to church not because of God, but for something else. You have something else in your head. Not only do you lay up judgment for yourself when you do such a thing, but you condemn yourself, and at the same time, you waste your time. Ladies and gentlemen, this should change our worship when we go to God, especially when we go to Him in prayer. Even if it's just simple thanksgiving or a short 5-minute prayer. So here we are. So their holiness lays in these rituals, and those two such as God never commanded. Didn't God say, "Come to me, come, come in holy, for I am holy"? Or what's the warning in Ecclesiastes 5? Let's take a look at that, folks. Let's take a look at that. So at least before the Sunday morning comes, you would reflect and pray to God to prepare your hearts and minds. Here, Ecclesiastes 5, 1-2. Guard your steps as you go to the house of God, and draw near to listen rather than to offer the sacrifice of fools. Sacrifice of fools. This is what the Jews are doing. For they do not know they are doing evil. Ladies and gentlemen, this is called irreverence. Do not be hasty in word or impulsive in thought to bring up a matter in the presence of God. For God is in heaven and you are on the earth. Therefore, let your words be few. I don't have to explain that to you guys. You know how that is. God prefers simple yet sincere words rather than beautiful ones that mean nothing. And indeed, those who most exceed in such ritual holiness lie merely in a separation from others, but the usage of some unreal. I mean, you got to be the biggest pleb to freaking think that you're better than everyone else. Come most short in moral and true holiness, for of these God saith, "These are smoke in my nostrils, a fire that burneth all the day." That is a continual provocation to see, stacking up judgment. Don't kindle the fire, don't feed it. Better not start the forest fire, otherwise it's going to turn bad for you. Proverbs 10:26. What does it say? In order we can appreciate this verse more, and it says, "Like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is the lazy one to those who send him." Disgusting, discomforting, just so like there's so many other. I mean, just a number of dis words or anything that contains the root word dis that expresses this this distaste. There it is. This distaste of of pride towards God. I mean, like this distaste that God expresses about pride. It makes an ass out of you, and you become an ass to people, right? Which seemeth to be the sense rather than what some make, who make it a threatening of God's wrath, smoking against them, which is sufficiently expressed in the following verses. Talking to you, Smokey Sam. Just kidding. Because of the word smoke there. I love you, kiss kiss. Anyway, Gill's exposition of the entire Bible, which say, "Stand by thyself," right? According to Aben, Ezra, Jarchi, and Kimchi, These are the unclean persons that did the above things, who say to the righteous, draw near to yourself. So the words are, go to thine own place, or to thine own company, and come not near to me, keep off at a distance as unworthy of such company. Like, what is this, freaking COVID? For I am holier than thou. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is not to be confused with the warning of Paul, where bad company ruins good morals. This is something else. You abstain from bad company so that you don't compromise your walk with God. Not to abstain from bad company because you think you're better than everyone else. So that this is an entirely different matter as to why you would separate yourself from the unlawful. Because because while that is true that bad company ruins good morals, God didn't abstain from talking. As demonstrated earlier, God didn't abstain from talking with the prostitutes and the thieves and the debaucherous because he was sharing the word. He didn't leave because they because they he just thinks they were jerks. He left because, well, oh, this is what they want to do, so fine. They don't want to listen, they don't want to hear, fine. You don't take a healthy man who knows a lot about his own health to a physician, but you take a sick man to a physician, right? God was teaching. He did this with love. He didn't go to righteous people. He went to unrighteous people, hoping that they become righteous. Now, and fitly describes such who lived in the times of Christ, and exactly agrees with the characters of such, who not only would have no dealings with the Samaritans, but washed themselves when they came from market or any public place, lest they should be defiled with the common people of their own nation, and even with religious persons, who would not stand near them while praying, but despised them. If they had not arrived to that pitch of outward sanctity, they had see. They sanctity they had. I'm sorry. If they had not arrived to that pitch of outward sanctity, they had see John 4:9 and 18. Like, let's say if they didn't get into that level. So what does John 4:9 have to say about that? If they didn't reach that certain level of sanctity. Remember, only God can sanctify. But even the Jews here who are focused on their traditions and their ranks tells us that free grace is dead. Look at them. Look at them. They're taking this seriously, at least. The Samaritan woman, therefore, okay, this is from John 4:9. The Samaritan woman, therefore, said to him, how is it that you, being a Jew, ask me for a drink, since I am a Samaritan woman? For Jews have no dealings with the Samaritan. Yeah, Jesus wasn't a Jew. And she answered her, if you knew the gift of God and who it is who says to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. She said to him, sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where then do you get that living water? You are not greater than our father Jacob, are you? Who gave us the well and drank of it himself and his son and his cattle? Jesus answered and said to her, everyone who drinks of this water shall thirst again. But whoever drinks of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall become in him a well of water, springing up to eternal life. The woman said to him, sir, give me this water, so I will not be thirsty, nor come all the way here to draw. He said to her, go call your husband and come here. The woman answered, I have no husband. Jesus said to her, you have well said, I have no husband, for you have 5 husbands, and the one whom you now have is not your husband. This you have said truly. The woman said, sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Oh my gosh. John 4:19 just kills the exact words criteria of these Islamists. They go like, show me unequivocally and explicitly that God said I am that Jesus said I am God, worship me. Like what further validation do you need? But no, that's not the topic at hand. But so let's continue. You have no husband. And God said, yes, of course you don't have a husband because right now you had about five husbands, and the one you have right now is now yours. Yeah, God has a sense of humor too. He can also be kind of a dirtbag, but he's just being honest, and not for the sake of being a dirtbag. He's being honest about it, and it's true. Sir, I perceive that you're a prophet or father. So see, why would a Jew like you concern yourself with a Samaritan woman like me? That's the thing. God wasn't this holier than thou. Well, he is holier than the rest. He didn't exhibit this holier than thou attitude. He talked to a Samaritan woman, in which in the culture of the Jews back in the day, they would not associate themselves with Samaritans. What about Luke 18:9? Luke 18:9. See, folks. So whenever somebody says whether you're a Christian yet you're hanging up with atheists or speaking with atheists, well, what did Jesus do? When you're not supposed to be with people, when you're not supposed to be with people who you're not supposed to associate with. But there is a difference between just being their friend and validating what they do. Don't forget that. And he also told this parable to certain ones who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and viewed others with contempt. Yeah, self-righteous people too. They were righteous and viewed other people with contempt. So there's also this fact that yeah, you can't just be cynical about this one. While you try to do your best to while you try to do your best to to be good, you can't just look down on people because you're the same thing. Thanks for the sub, by the way, Will. Anyway, so Pharisees would not suffer themselves to be touched by the common people, nor would they touch them. See? So these guys were so these Pharisees back in the day were so concerned with their image, they were so concerned with their rank and their reputation. They would go on and point fingers to others that they undermine themselves. Like have you ever told somebody or challenged them with the question, have you ever looked in the mirror? And they're living, well, I don't know if there were mirrors back in the day, but they're living as if they never saw themselves in the mirror. Like they never the point I'm trying to make is that no there is no sense of honest and fair self reflection. That's what I'm trying to convey. So whenever, so when, so yeah, not a literal mirror. I mean, sure you can have that because right now we have mirrors, but the point there is self-reflection. If the Pharisees touch but the garments of the common, see, even commoners who probably are, yeah, this goes back to the parable of the Good Samaritan. There was this guy, Profluvius. Yeah, this is a word I'm gonna use now. Profluvius sitting by the tree. Pharisee sees him and he just walks by. This kind of tradition just makes a cunt out of people. So the Pharisees touched with the garments of the common people, they were defiled, all one as if they had touched a profluvious person. Yeah, if COVID touches you by even by an inch of your insides, then you're now dirty all over. That's how it's like. This trash beneath my feet attitude is just so stupid. So that when they walked in the streets, they used to walk on the sides of the way, that they might not be defiled by touching them. So they would walk not at the vicinity of which these people were in. So Epiphanius, um, don't spam me, Dr. Kenny. So Epiphanius relates of the Samaritan Jews that when they touch one of another nation, they dip themselves with their clothes in water, for they reckon it a defilement to touch anyone, or to touch any man of another religion. And of the Scythians, who were another sect of the Samaritans, that same writer observes that they studiously avoid touching any, for they abhor every man. A certain Arabic geographer of note makes mention of an island called the Island of the Samaritans, inhabited by some Samaritan Jews, as appears by their saying to any that apply to them, "Do not touch." And by this it is known that they were of the Jews who were called Samaritans. And this same arrogant superstition, as Scaliger observes, continues in that people to this day, as those relate who have conversed with them. Now, remember when I said, or we read a part in Mark where that the Jews were so focused on their traditions, they undermined the telos. The same thing with Acts when you play with history. Total disregard or partial knowledge of God. Uh, if partial knowledge of the word of God is dangerous, there is more danger into adding that what God has written. This is the source of all superstition. And you can see these traditions, man-made precepts, being added supposedly to the word of God or the Torah or whatever, because well, some of it contains it there. Like all these traditions, just a lot of additions, a lot of legislations, just makes it doesn't make Christianity free. It just makes it so constricted. I mean, there are some restrictions that God would tell us, like God tells us not to do, and in the best interest, in the sense that we don't just screw ourselves over. But this is just too much, man. I can't be friends. I mean, this is like Puritan. This is like puritanical policing. They get to tell you who your friends are. They get to tell you what clothes you ought to wear. They get to tell you what to say and what not to say. See? And God was right when he said, "Hey, you undermine the telos of the law. You undermine my commandments." And here's the result. Your man-made traditions, which makes an ass out of you, an ass out of people. Partial knowledge of God is dangerous. How much more adding something to it, which is the source of all superstition. See? That's a commentary on Acts 1:1 under biblical illustrators commentary. So moving forward, these are smokes in my nose, a fire that burneth all the day, very offensive to the divine being. Yes, so as I said again, pride is the one thing that got it. I mean, and even what it made a rebel out of Lucifer, which is the actual meaning of Satan. Very offensive to the divine being, as smoke is to the eyes and nostrils, very abominable to him, and whose proud and vain conduct raised indignation in him. Yeah, folks, let's not stack judgment on let's not stack judgment to our pride. Okay, Geneva Study Bible, which says, "Stand by thyself, come not near to me, for I'm holier than thou. These are a smoke in my nose, a fire that burneth all day." He shows that hypocrisy is always joined with, see, so I was right the first time. Oh, well, I'm not saying right by it is, but at least this person here, author of this one, is validating it. But it's pretty obvious, though. I mean, you gotta be somebody who has a pretty high opinion of himself in order to look down on people. You got to be the biggest prideful man to pull off a know you. and thinking that calling the kettle the N-word, and thinking that being the pot and you calling the kettle the N-word is sound. Their punishment will never have an end. Stacking up judgment every time you have a high look of yourself. Okay, exegeticals. So stand by thyself, keep aloof, like keep off. Come not into contact with me, for mine is a higher holiness than thine, and I should be polluted by your near approach. Yeah. Noli metang ire at its very Noli metang ire, touch me not. That's a novel from Jose Rizal. So yeah, Noli metang ire at its most jackass, um, jackass form. Initiation into heathen mysteries was thought to confer on the initiated a holiness unattainable otherwise. Sacrilege. Thus, the heathenized Jew claimed to be holier than the true servants of Jehovah. These are a smoke, a fire. There went up a smoke of his nostrils, and fire out of his mouth devoured coals were kindled. The heathenized Jews are fuel for the wrath of God, which kindles a fire wherein they burn continually. Stacking up judgment. And it's continuing. We keep feeding it. Remember this, guys. We keep feeding that kindled fire on God's wrath whenever we have a high look upon ourselves or we don't realize it. And I guess that goes for all sins too. So we better not make God angry. All right, so lest we be spanked. Okay, now we're at Proverbs 3, chapter 30, verse 12, and it has the same idea here. There is a generation that are pure in their own eyes, and yet it is not washed from their filthiness. I would like to say thank you, Jared, for giving me these verses, something I could talk about. I did just remember now at the Shastis, I didn't add in the sources, so that's going to be for another video or another stream. So there is a generation that are pure in their own eyes, and yet is not washed from their filthiness. So what does JFB Bible commentary have to say? There are four kinds of hateful persons: graceless children, hypocrites, the proud, and cruel oppressors. Graceless. Graceless. From this is the root which these other three sprout from. The insatiability of prodigal children and their faith. Yes, a fate. Yes, like the prodigal son. Yep. And he realized his hypocrisy, his debauchery, so he came back to his father. Various examples of pride and oppression. So let's look at these ones first. So for variable number 1, which is graceless children, let's take a look at Proverbs chapter 30, verse 15. If you guys have your Bibles, feel free to tag along, open that one. And if you have your markers, yeah, you can mark them too. Well, not mark and avoid, but mark them. So anyway, chapter 30, verse 15, and it says, the leech has 2 daughters. Give. There are 3 things that will not be satisfied, 4 that will not say enough. It's always give. Give. Give and give are the names of the 2 daughters, graceless children, and their names are give. Imagine the irony. Sheol and the barren womb, earth that is never satisfied with water, and fire that never says enough. Yes, the fire remains unkindled. It always needs something. No, it wants to stop burning. The fire that never says enough. Like it's not it doesn't. I mean, the idea that if you want to keep a fire up, you have to feed it with something that it could burn or sustain from, like firewood or anything that is combustible. Yeah, so the illustration, like the fire that never says enough, like there is no satisfaction here, there's no contentment here. That's why the graceless children are looked upon as leeches that whose names are called give, or gracious children are illustrated as 2 daughters, and both of their names are both of their names are called give and give. So they're like a fire that never says enough. In order for the fire to be sustained, you have to feed it some more. Sheol and the barren womb, earth that is never satisfied with water. So when you look at Sheol and the barren womb, it's I mean, a barren womb cannot produce children, no matter how many times you guys get it on in the bed. It doesn't matter how many times you do it. The barren womb will never reproduce, or will never have this cycle of fertility. No matter how many times it has been done, it's never there. So it's not satisfied. Let's try it again. Let's try it again. Let's try it again. Just like the fire, it never says enough, because in order for it to be sustained, you have to give it something else that it could kindle from. Now, what about variable number 2? Hypocrites. Verse 17 of Proverbs. The eye that mocks a father and scorns a mother, the ravens of the valley will pick it out, and the young eagles will eat it. Yes, just like Isaiah 65:5. And the proud, which is verses 18 to 20. No, that's no. The proud and the cruel. Yes, the proud and the cruel. That's verses 18 to 20. And these are various examples of pride and oppression. There are three things which are too wonderful for me, for which I do not understand. By the way, wonderful is not used here in a sense that it's good or astounding, but in a negative sense. The way of an eagle in the sky, the way of a serpent on a rock, the way of a ship in the middle of the sea, and the way of a man with a maid. This is the way of an adulterous woman. She eats and wipes her mouth and says, I have done no wrong. Wow. I have taken and done no wrong. What about Matthew Poole? Who not only pretend to others, but conceit within themselves that they are true religious persons when they live in the course of wickedness. You see? Gill's exposition of the entire Bible. There is a generation that are pure in their own eyes, not in the eyes of God. Remember, guys, God looks at the heart, not at the outward appearance. You can be holy outside, but not in the inside. You can be light in the inside, but regard darkness in the. You could be light in the outside, but regard darkness in the inside. Not in the eyes of God, who sees the heart and all the impurities of it, as well as of life and conversation, nor in the eyes of others, through such may appear outwardly righteous before men, but in their own eyes, in their own conceit and imagination, trusting in themselves that they are righteous. But such have not their eyes opened or enlightened to see the plague of their own hearts. You see? But such have not their eyes opened or enlightened to see the plague of their own hearts, the spirituality of the law of God, the perfection of the righteousness that requires. Nor the righteous. I'm just gonna. Sorry, because I can look back at this too. But such have not their eyes open. The perfection of righteousness that requires, nor the righteousness and holiness of God Himself, nor the imperfection and insufficiency of their own, did they would not seem pure and righteous to themselves. No man is pure by nature, or through anything done by them, but by the grace of God and through the blood of righteousness of Christ. And such are far from being pure in their own eyes, or as considered in themselves, but those who are pure neither by nature nor by grace, yet they think they are so. By nature nor by grace, both believing and unbelieving. Like, how does this exposition not kill free grace at the same time? You can't just bury your head in the sand and say, well, I may have done a lot of bad things, but God has me locked in. No, you're lying to yourself. It's cheap grace. It's not like, I wouldn't look at God as giving me a cheap car or a used car anyway. So there were some such in Abgar's time, and such were the scribes and Pharisees in Christ's time. There were a generation of them, and they're of the same sort in our days, as papists, or let's say sinless perfectionists, which probably is something that the Pelagians adapted, and self-justiciaries, like the Puritans and possibly the Pelagians too. And yet it is not washed from their filthiness. There goes my Filipino accent. From their filthiness, their native, original, and universal pollution by sin they have from their birth, and which is increased by numerous actual transgressions, and from which none are or can be washed but those who are born of water and of the Spirit. Not This is not to be taken as literal water baptism. I mean, be baptized in the Spirit, be baptized by the blood of Christ, or are washed within the washing of or are washed with the washing of regeneration, and are washed from their sins in the blood of the Lamb, whose blood cleanses from all sin, and are arrayed with the fine linen, clean and white. The righteousness of the saints, which is the righteousness of Christ, imputed to them. Whatsoever is short of these leaves men unwashed from their filthiness, whatever opinion they may have of themselves. See, another one. How does this exposition not kill free grace? This is a free grace killer, ladies and gentlemen, considering the latter end. Whatsoever is short of themselves leaves men unwashed from their filthiness, whatever opinion they may have of themselves. Yet is not washed from their filthiness, or born of water, or washed within the washing of regeneration. So there is some sanctification going on too. Sanctification is essential with salvation. You have to show fruits, you have to show humility, and if you're not humble, then you basically can't see that in yourself. Job 9:30. Take a step back from Psalms and say, there you go. There goes Job. Anyway, so Job here is saying in verse 9, in chapter 9, verse 30, if I should wash myself with snow and cleanse my hands with lye, yet thou wouldst plunge me into the pit, and my own clothes would abhor me. Yeah. Only God can make you white as snow. You could wash yourself, you could be like snow, but at the end of the day, no. Like I said, you can come off like light on the outside, yet regard darkness within. So I thought of an illustration when it comes to stuff like this a while ago. Picture a table that is dusty, and you simply took a rag. By the way, keep in mind the idea that our righteousness is nothing more but filthy rags, and we have seen this demonstrated by the Jewish tradition and the idea of hypocrisy. Now, a table is dirty. You take a rug and you wipe it off, and once you wipe off most of the dirt, it's clean. But if you give it a close inspection, or if it's shown in the sunlight, you will see that either there's some dust that remains in the table, or it's just flying off to the side, just still landing, and then more of it, or some of the things you wipe from it is still landing back in the table. So there's a thing we call like a furniture spray. It's like a special chemical that you use to make the table appear glossy and sparkly clean. So yeah, it takes special chemicals to like really clean something. And in this case, if you want to be clean, then come to God. You don't have to be great to come to God, but come to God and you'll be great. That's how it is, guys. I mean, there's no way I could get around that. So you can call me Mr. Axiom all you like, but there's just no way to get around that. Only God can make you whiter, as white as snow. What about Jeremiah of chapter 2, verse 22? What does he have to say? He says, although you wash yourself with lye and use much soap, the stain of your iniquity is before me, declares the Lord God. See, this isn't a hygiene problem. This is a purity problem. And I bet Jeremiah 2:22 is very relatable to the tradition of the Jews back in Mark 7, verse 4. Or was it verse 4, 7? Let me go take a look. Mark 7, 4. Yes, that's true. It's when they went to the marketplace and cleaned everything. Like, what is to be clean? Like, clean hygienically or purity? But the same idea there, right? You can clean yourselves, but if you're dirty, if your soul is dirty, then don't worry, dude. I see it. You can't just cover yourself with the best perfumes and think that you don't stink. And I mean, God is like saying, I mean, you can cover yourself with the best perfumes in the world has to offer, but if you stink, like essentially, and not by smell, then it doesn't matter how much perfume you have, you still stink. Right? Can't bury yourself with, fine myrrh and think that you don't stink at all. All right, exegetical. We're almost done, guys. So, pulpit commentary. This is my favorite. A generation that are pure in their own eyes. Proverbs 29, verse 29. We already looked at Luke 18. So, what about Proverbs chapter 20, verse 9? So, 9 says, "Who can say, I have cleansed my heart? I am pure from my sin." Boom. You can't get more explicit than that, folks. Again, who can say, I have cleansed my heart? I am pure from my sin. No man can say this. No mortal man can say this. How does this, again, not kill free grace too? When they have to adopt this sort of degree of Gnosticism, where they can't be possibly wrong and have no sin residing in them. The second characteristic is hypocrisy and pharisaical self-righteousness, as we read a while ago in chapter 18. And yet are not washed from their filthiness, have not cleansed their heart by complete repentance. Boom. You can't bury your head in the sand, free gracers, and pretend this isn't here. Newsflash, there are a lot of parts that I haven't read, but also you guys haven't read too. Either because they have not examined themselves and know nothing of the real estate of their conscience, or because they care nothing about it and will not regard it in its true light. So either they didn't, or are just really bad with self-examination, or they do, but it's more biased to their benefit, or they just don't give a crap if it's in line with the truth. Paul did say, do worketh out your own salvation, examine thyself if you are in the faith. So yeah, this verse 12 and Proverbs 20 verse 9 is a free grace killer. So there is a similar expression in Isaiah 4:4. And what does it say? Oh, thank you, Lord Jesus Christ. Right when I open it, it's Isaiah 4. It's Isaiah. When the Lord has washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion and purged the bloodshed of Jerusalem from her midst, by the spirit of judgment and the spirit of burning. Only God can make you white as snow. Septuagint, a wicked generation judges themselves to be just, but have not washed themselves clean. Now here, and I hope I can do a proper exposition on this one. There is a generation that are pure in their own eyes, and yet is not washed from their filthiness. A generation of how lofty are their eyes, and their eyelids are lifted up. The same idea with self-righteousness, and how the Pharisees and the Hindu yogis, according to Mr. Roberts, how they're conveyed. They have such a high look at themselves that they can't seem or wouldn't even bat a thought as to what is wrong with me, because they're so convinced that they're good. So why would you? I mean, if there's nothing wrong, why would you not look at it, right? But that's the danger of it. That's a malpractice of humility. And I've been thinking about this quote too, guys. So I want you to, this is something I made out of my own mind and mouth. And I want you guys to pay close attention, because this applies to all of us and to the situation we're in right now. People are so busy emphasizing judgment on the past, that they undermine the present and the future. Again, people are so, did I say it right? Hang on. No. Crap. Let me do that again. People put emphasis of judging the past, that they have to undermine the present and the future. In order to do just that. Again, people put so much emphasis in the past that they undermine the present and the future in order to do just that. And I'll leave you with that thought. So that concludes our Bible reading. So we're going to allow people to come in the room now. I will allow people to come in the room now. Link is there for you to come in. I've also pinned it up there. So yeah, guys. So if you guys got any thoughts or want to share something, do chime in. Do chime in. Well, Kincaid, these are your paid mix and match. I call it drive-through. Yes. I call it drive-through theology. Hi, Guru. Yeah, I'm glad you're home. Thank God. That means you're safe and sound. Okay, guys, it's open mic hour, so if you guys want to chime in, feel free. Right. Hey, Boki, self-righteousness is a soul killer. I agree. What do we got here? Nikki, it's good to see you, brother. I didn't realize you were streaming. Glad you're back to let us know. Good stuff, Boki. Thank you very much. We both, yes, takeaway. Woo! We both love Jesus and like Wing Chun, so Boki is a bro. We both love Jesus and like Wing Chun, so Boki's a bro. Cool. Yeah, appreciate the sentiments, guys. Seat of your pants theology and Yaakism creates atheist syndromes. We are making dinner. Okay, so I guess we'll have to save. I mean, open mic hour has to be at some point again. Maybe that'll be a different stream for now. So if no one's going to come into the room and say their thoughts or challenge what the big boys have said and what God has said, then so I'm going to sign out. So if you guys find this reading to be fruitful, please do share it with your friends and family. And if you like this, do subscribe, do leave a like, so you don't miss more content, and this will motivate me to do more. This is how I know if I'm doing it right or if I'm doing it wrong, or if I need to make more adjustments so the impact would be better. And so if anyone is not going to come in, or if anyone has no more questions, then God bless you all. And God bless you all. Don't take your salvation for granted. Be aware of the tenets of God. And yeah, don't believe that you're already on the top of the mountain. And if you are, then climb up another one. That's all I can say. So with that, I am signing out.